Hello and welcome to Sharing Jewish Wisdom.
Hello and welcome back to Sharing Jewish Wisdom. So we've been producing some great content and today's no exception because I'm pleased to say that Reb Shlomo is back with us. Hello Reb Shlomo, how are you?
Hello Mark, nice to see you, nice to see all of you out there looking in here. Welcome back. There's been a little bit of what I think they call a hiatus, which I thought was some Caribbean island. But we're now back up and running, but hopefully in the same direction.
Good.
So today we're going to talk about something that's coming up in the not too distant future and comes up regularly, called Rosh Chodesh. Now I know many of you will say, oh, I know what that's about. Well, we're going to find out if in fact we really do. Because we're going to have a little look at the history of Rosh Chodesh and what the practical parts are of observing the occasion. So let's start at the very beginning, which is always a good place to start, by talking about what is Rosh Chodesh. So let's translate it into English. Rosh means a head, and everybody wants to get ahead, I suppose. But Rosh is a head, and the Chodesh is a month. So Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of the month. Not a big surprise there. And it comes round with a certain regularity. But what regularity? We're going to find out in just a minute. So the beginning of the month is the rebirth of the moon. And as I'm sure everybody looking in knows, the Jewish people operate on a lunar, not a solar cycle. And therefore, the return of the moon is an indication of the new month and the rebirth of it. But it is also a parallel for the story of the Jewish people. Because the moon starts from virtually nothing, it waxes until the middle of the month, and then wanes and appears to disappear, if that isn't some sort of problematical term, but it appears to disappear, and then suddenly comes back again. And that is the story of the Jewish people. We're doing okay, and then suddenly things don't go so well, and it appears that we are in trouble, and then we spring back again, back to the forefront of the world. That's the Jewish people. So we have a close connection with the operation of the moon. Now, as I said, we operate on a lunar calendar of about 354 days a year, in contrast to the solar calendar, which has 365 and a quarter days in the year. And in fact, we're doing this recording on the 28th of January. So tomorrow, the 29th of January, which appears once every 4 years, is leap year day. So we have a bit of a problem because the lunar calendar is also tied with the agricultural year. For example, the spring festival of Pesach, the harvest festival of Sukkot. And if we didn't bring things into line, we'd end up with Pesach in January and Sukkot in July, or some sort of muddle like that, which would in fact defeat the object of the exercise. And so our sages, always clever, decided that they would create a second month of Adar. Right? We're in the first month of Adar at the moment.
Is that because of the leap year?
Right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is in fact the first Adar, which is the extra month, but it therefore means there are two Adars and things come back into kilter. Now, I'm sure many people will know that we operate on a 19-year cycle. And just to show off, because this is something that I learned in Cheder many years ago, that there are leap years in the 19-year cycle in years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19. Right, so in each of those years there's an extra Adar, and that keeps us steady.
Interesting.
There we are. The calendar was in fact fixed by Hillel II in the year about 150 CE. But of course, there was a time when we had no calendar. There was a time when no such thing existed, I should say, wrong teeth in today, until the children of Israel left Egypt. So the question that arises is,
Why?
very good. Why did they need a calendar at that time? And if we look in the book of Shemos, Exodus, chapter 12, it says, "Achodesh hazeh lochem Rosh Chodesh." This month, referring to Nisan, is going to be the first of months to you. It's the institution by Almighty God of a calendar. So why then? Well, the answer is very simple. When the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, were slaves, they didn't need a calendar. One day was much the same as another. You got up, you did what you were told as a slave, and you went to bed, and so on. It repeated itself. Now they were going to be a free nation, they needed the fabric and the goalpost, if we put it that way, of a calendar. There we go. And that's when it began and it came into being. And when we count the months, if you ask a little child in Cheder to recite off the months for you, they will always begin with Nisan, not Tishri, but Nisan. Nisan here, 7 Tammuz, and so on, because Nisan is the first of months. There we go. So that's how that all arises. Now, you will, I hope, be seeing a chart coming up on your screen, which will show you the months of the year and whether they have 29 or 30 days. Some of them always have 29, some of them always have 30, and just to juggle you out of a false sense of security, some of them have 29 or possibly 30. Oh my goodness gracious me, what a carry on. Now, we announce the forthcoming event of Rosh Chodesh on the Shabbos beforehand, on what's called Shabbos Mavorchim, the Shabbos of blessing, because we're blessing the new moon to come. Now, there was, of course, a time when, for the new moon to be proclaimed, witnesses had to appear before the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court of its time, and the witnesses had to give evidence of what they'd seen.
Wow.
They had to say, well, I saw this and this shape of a moon, and only if the Sanhedrin was satisfied would they accept that evidence, and if it was before the onset of dusk, they would proclaim that day the new moon, or if it was after nightfall, they would proclaim the next day the new moon of Rosh Chodesh. Of course, we don't do that anymore because we haven't got a Sanhedrin, but there were nevertheless 2 months when it was vital for people to know when Rosh Chodesh was. No, the months were first of all Nisan, because they had to know when Pesach was going to fall, because otherwise they were at risk of eating chametz on Pesach, which, as anybody who reads the Torah will tell you, is an absolutely mega no-no, naughty, right? Fine. So then the other one was the month of Tishri. Why? Because they had to know when Yom Kippur was, because otherwise they might not observe Yom Kippur, including the fast, and that's another mega naughty no-no.
Yes.
So those were the, of course, what happened was, and I should have filled this bit in for you, was that once the Sanhedrin proclaimed a particular day as Rosh Chodesh, what happened was that riders were sent out, bonfires were lit to indicate, and people could see the bonfires, and further out, riders went out with the message about Rosh Chodesh. But of course, going to outlying parts, they may not get there for a day or two, perhaps even longer, I don't know. I've never ridden a horse. So the point was that, okay, the people in these outlying middle of nowhere places might miss Rosh Chodesh, but it was vital for them to know other things coming up in the month so that they could prepare. And that's how it all worked. So what do we do now in order to mark Rosh Chodesh? Well, first of all, we add into our Amida a paragraph called Yale V'Yovo, which appears on any Yom Tov, except for Purim and Hanukkah now I think about it. But certainly we say on Rosh Chodesh, we say half Hallel. There's a special reading from the Torah for those who want to go and check it up. It's Bamidbar, Numbers 28. We call up 4 people for Aliyahs. If Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, of course, there are 2 Sifrot, there are 2 scrolls, one for the regular weekly reading and one for the additional reading for Rosh Chodesh. There's a special Haftorah for the day. Or, if Rosh Chodesh is Sunday, there's another special Haftorah called Mocha Chodesh, which deals with the event that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh.
Right, when will that be read in Shacharis?
It's read at the end of laning, after the end of reading the weekly Torah portion. Yes, very good. In the Musaf, the additional service we say on Shabbos, instead of saying Tikkun Shabbos, we say something called Ata Yotzata, and it deals with the formation of the world and the creation of the moon and the cycles and so on that we acknowledge on that special occasion. And some people have a custom that on Rosh Chodesh they make a special meal, normally a meat meal, to honour the day, just as you would on a Shabbos or Yom Tov. Right? Fine. Now, if it's a meat meal, here's a question there. You'll like this one. Well, I hope you did. Question is, if you do that, what happens on the 1st of Av, from which point we stop eating meat for 9 days? Right. The answer is that if you make a Rosh Chodesh Suda every month, you can actually make it with meat on the 1st of Av. Wow. If you don't, then you can't.
Wow, that's interesting.
There you are. That's a little
nugget.
By the way for you.
Chicken nugget.
Well, if it's meat, it would be, wouldn't it? Yes, or a lamb nugget if you prefer. And finally, but by no means least, as they say, Achron Choviv. What about the ladies? Because by tradition, Rosh Chodesh is a holiday for them. So, what is it that's different? Well, first of all, they are invited to refrain from work. And when I say work, it doesn't mean that you ring in and throw a sickie or something. It's by work, we're talking specifically about the various types of work that were involved in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which we're actually reading around about this time of the year. So things like weaving and whatever, women are invited to refrain from that to show it's a holiday for them. And why not? And I found something very interesting. There's a well-known work called the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, the observations or comment of one of the great sages, Rabbi Eliezer. And he brings down a Talmudic observation which says that why was it also a special day for the women? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu was up on Mount Sinai and appeared to be delayed, people came to his brother Aaron and said, right, make us a god that we can actually see. which we know to have become the golden calf. So Aaron went round soliciting gold jewellery from people to melt down and make this golden calf. But the women refused to give up their jewellery. And as a reward for that, they get this holiday of Rosh Chodesh.
Interesting.
There you go. So if anybody comes and knocks on your mother's door and asks for some jewellery, you tell her she'll stand firm, and the answer is no. Good. Right, there we are. I think that's about it for today. Thank you everybody for looking in. Don't forget, do subscribe, or if you already do, get some friends to join in, and a few highlights and comments of the most polite nature will be very welcome. I know what Mark is going to ask me now, because he asks me every time.
That's right.
And he's a creature of habit, and he's going to say to me,
what's our next big presentation?
do you know something? I could have guessed that. So he's going to say, what's the next presentation? Right, well, we're going to do something a little bit different. It seems that some of our workshops have been well received.
Yes.
So we're going to do a 2-part workshop. Woohoo! It's going to be about the forthcoming event of Purim, which is not now far away. The first part, which we may do next week or perhaps the week after, we'll see depending on circumstances, will be looking at the story of Purim and what the lessons are that we can learn so many centuries later. And the second part will be looking at the practical observance of Purim. Some of you will say, well, I know what I have to do. I just have to get sozzled. Well, I'm sure you can do that any day of the week, although perhaps not with rabbinic approval. See your rabbi, see if he gets drunk as well. But there are lots of other related matters to the observance of Purim, and we will be discussing what to do, how to do it, and so forth. So that's something to look forward to, and we both are looking forward to seeing you then and having your welcome attendance and participation. Thank you very much. All the best.
Well done. That was very good. So we look forward to seeing you at our next presentation, and we wish you all a good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Please click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for some great content.